Good evening. I'm Chris Reardon, Dean of the Daniels College of Business. Welcome to our October Voices of Experience with Sally Jewell, CEO of REI. How many of you here in the audience are avid outdoorists, hikers, bikers, runners, mountaineers, skiers? Absolutely. I don't think we could be in Colorado without having that in our background. I think we're in for a real treat tonight. As many of you know, REI is a leading retailer in sporting goods, apparel, and gear for the outdoor lifestyle. Beyond their products, they also offer a number of classes, one of which I should have been taking tonight, which was on how to change your bike tires. I thought for sure I was safe when I purchased the Armadillo tires and put goo, but no, the goat thorns here in Colorado get me every single time. This company is a $1.7 billion operation. It has a fascinating business model. It has consumers who become part of its membership. They basically buy into the company, and at the end of the year, based on profits, they receive a dividend back. How great is that? They also are known as one of the best places to work here in the United States, ranked consistently in the top 100 by Fortune magazine as best places to work. This year alone, REI is ranked number 9. That's very impressive. I'd say that one's worth a round of applause. The thing that's near and dear to our heart, of course, is that REI focuses on ethics and sustainability. They feel very strongly about the accountability not only to their employees and to their consumers, but also to the communities in which they live and operate. Now, tonight, as you know, could not be possible without the help and support of many of our business partners and many of the leading businesses here in town, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize those as well. Our financial sponsors include Grant Thornton, First Bank, CoBank, Hamilton, Potts, and Waller. In-kind sponsors include Chase, Rocky Mountain Human Resource People and Strategy, National Association of Corporate Directors, Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, Net Impact Marketing Roundtable, and Three Tomatoes Catering. I also want to recognize one of our MBA students, Joe Massimini, who is responsible tonight for bringing Sally Jewell here today. Now, we have a room full of 1,100 people, so let's make some noise and thank all of our business sponsors for this evening. This event would not be possible, and it's free and open to the public because of all of these people that are contributing their time, money, and energy to this event. Now, we are really in for a delightful evening with Sally Jewell. She is just an amazing leader. She is a person after my own heart with an engineering degree from the University of Washington. She started out her career in the extraction industry, working for Mobil Oil in the oil fields. After 3 years, she went on and moved into banking to help them evaluate the actual capital that existed in oil. She worked in the banking industry for over 20 years and became a member of REI. She then moved on to their board of directors, and soon after, she was recruited to become their chief operating officer. After just a few short years, she then went on to become their CEO in 2005. She started in the business when it was around $850 million, and as I mentioned just a moment ago, grew it to $1.7 billion in 2011. Pretty impressive. Let's give a very warm welcome to Sally Jewell.
Thank you. It's great to be back in Denver. It's actually kind of in my hood. When I lived here, I was working for Mobil Oil, and I lived in Bonnie Brae, so practically drove within just a little ways from my old house, 889 South Steel Street, if you want to go by. I think they put on a second story since I lived there. It is a real honor and privilege to be here, and thank you. What a great, most amazing turnout. It says something about the University of Denver, the Daniels College of Business, and the Denver community. And this is a community that I enjoyed when I lived here, so thank you so much for turning out in these numbers. I also want to start with a quote from the person just speaking, Dean Reardon, who said when the Daniels College of Business was written up by the Aspen Institute as 15th best business school in the world. At Daniels, we believe there's a greater purpose to business and that it can and must be a driving force behind positive change. So that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today, is the role of business. And kind of a goofy title, Terra Cognita Negotium. What on earth does that mean? Well, I did not take Latin. I was an engineer. We didn't take Latin. We took a lot of Greek symbols, but basically it's the awakening of business to the future of our planet. Terra for Earth, Cognita for awareness, and Negotium for business. And so what I want to talk to you about is sort of the evolution of where business was and where business needs to be today if we're going to have a healthy planet and a healthy world. And I can tell you that this is probably a friendly audience given what Daniel stands for around ethics and social responsibility in the environment. So it's complex. It's not easy. It's not even easy to go camping. Dad, can we make a campfire, please? Okay, you get the matches and I'll buy some carbon credits. It's been an evolution for all of us in terms of understanding how we interact with the Earth and its systems. And the next thing I want to show you is a pretty incredible ad. And this is a double-page spread from Life magazine in 1962, and I'm going to read the caption to you. This is from Humble Oil, which is the predecessor name to Exxon. Each day, Humble supplies enough energy to melt 7 million tons of glacier. This giant glacier has remained unmelted for centuries, yet the petroleum energy Humble supplies, if converted into heat, could melt it at the rate of 80 tons each second. Okay, so things have changed a little bit since that time. Probably not running that same ad. So 1962, that's what sold, right? That's what you wanted to emphasize with your brand. Interestingly, that same year was the year that Rachel Carson wrote her seminal book, Silent Spring, talking largely about the impacts of chemicals, notably DDT, on the population of birds and other things. But it was a great awakening. And I want to read a quote from her book that says, "We stand now where two roads diverge. But unlike the roads in Robert Frost's familiar poem, they are not equally fair. The road we have long been traveling, by the way, in 1962, is deceptively easy, a smooth superhighway on which we progress with great speed, but at its end lies disaster. The other fork in the road, the one less traveled by, offers our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of our Earth." Wow. 1962, 50 years ago. Same year, just coincidentally, that Humble ran that ad. So it's pretty clear we haven't been on Rachel Carson's road less traveled by. We have been on that superhighway. So fast forward nearly a half a century to this episode of Time magazine that I'm sure many of you remember. This is April 3rd, 2006. And on the cover, be worried, be very worried. And the related article, Earth at the Tipping Point, showed this picture, and glaciers have become something that symbolizes changes in our planet that we're trying hard to understand and trying hard to figure out what we can do to perhaps reverse these trends. This is a glacier in South America, someplace I just enjoyed. My carbon footprint was dreadful. I took a little sabbatical and went to Antarctica and South America. But there, you recognize what's at stake, and this is pretty clear that something very serious is at stake. So for some people, perhaps some that we hear on the news regularly, there's a basic premise that business, and in fact capitalism, is a key cause of the problems of our environment, with government the watchdog and regulation being a solution. I think there's certainly a role for regulation. I'll talk about that briefly a little bit later. But another more potent force that's at work, and it's at work in our daily lives and we see it on a regular basis, is that our customer expectations are changing. When I showed that Humble ad, your reaction was something that is, I think, would be consistent around society today. And that means our expectations have moved and changed. Another wonderful author, Paul Hawken, writes in The Ecology of Commerce that business is the only human institution with the scope, speed, and resources to save the world. But it's very difficult to unlock that motivation of business to fulfill our potential if the behavioral change we need to make is not in the best interests of our shareholders and our business overall. So there's been a growing awareness of what needs to be done, and other authors like Bill McDonough in his book Cradle to Cradle talk about our take, make, waste evolution and how that needs to change. So all of us basically, as consumers, as producers, as businesses, as individuals out there, have enjoyed the benefit of the economics of businesses and products where we take basic materials from the earth, we convert them using highly concentrated sources of energy, which took many millions of years of biological processes to produce, to make products that ultimately end up in a landfill. Those products that REI sells as well. Hopefully it takes a while before they get to the landfill, but that's ultimately where they're going. And that's an obviously unsustainable approach. Not only is there no away when we throw things in the garbage, but beyond the exploitation of our planet's resources, workers have also been considered expendable to some degree. And as we've seen an evolution of manufacturing around the world, and in this country as well through the industrial age and so on, there have been costs to human health through that process as well. So businesses traditionally, looking in the rearview mirror, succeeded by using environmental and social capital to further their business goals. But that traditional model is not going to work in the future. In fact, it's being considered increasingly exploitive, and that in itself poses a liability to business. So I want to show you another magazine picture. This from 1996, something many of you will recognize. A picture that changed the reputation of an incredible company almost overnight, and that, of course, is Nike. Nike, by the way, is doing amazing things in corporate social responsibility and fair labor practices around the world. But in my role as a regent at the University of Washington, sorry about that football game Saturday, but you know, we went 0-12 3 years ago, so we're on our way back. Anyway, we had rallies against Nike and all kinds of negative things around this company that's actually doing so many things that REI is learning from. I can't even name it. But the reputation damage done by this one picture to Nike continues to persist to this day. Here's another one that some of the people my age in the audience will relate to. I'll read this copy. Oxen working in the fields, the eternal river Ganges, jeweled elephants on parade. Today, these symbols of ancient India exist side by side with a new sight, modern industry. India has developed bold new plans to build its economy and bring the promise of a bright future to its more than 400 million people. But India needs the technical knowledge of the Western world. Throughout the free world, Union Carbide has been actively engaged in building plants for the manufacture of chemicals, plastics, carbons, gases, and metals. The people of Union Carbide welcome the opportunity to use their knowledge and skills in partnership with the citizens of so many great companies. Union Carbide, a hand in things to come. And you know what's coming next. And that is disastrous chemical accident in India that killed scores of people, thousands of people, and drove Union Carbide into bankruptcy. So these things that we've seen, of course, something you're very familiar with very recently. Doesn't matter how many millions of dollars you spend in advertising to promote yourself as a green company, it can all be taken away in one fell swoop with an accident. And by the way, we're human beings, we all make accidents. And as Dean Reardon said in the introduction, I used to work in the oil business. I was a petroleum engineer for Mobil Oil. I lived here in Denver working in the exploration and production division. We all use petroleum products in one form or another. We all own this spill as far as I'm concerned. I do as well, as I would submit almost all of you. Perhaps some of you don't use any hydrocarbons. I'd like to know how in the world that we live in. But there are consequences to how we have chosen to evolve, and it's our opportunity now to change it. And I hope that you will be doing that in the areas where you have a sphere of influence. So it sounds great to talk about these things. Yeah, let's just do that. But Oliver Wendell Holmes said it best. I would not give a fig for simplicity this side of complexity, but I would give my right arm for simplicity on the far side of complexity. And we are on the near side of complexity, and man, it is difficult. And in this silly season of a presidential election year, the inclination of all parts of the political process to oversimplify things that are unbelievably complex is pretty frustrating. We all know that talking about things being complex doesn't get votes, but I think it's really unfortunate because this requires the kind of science and ingenuity and business acumen that we have in this country and each of you have in the room to be able to solve it. So as a business leader leading REI, when I took on the CEO role in 2005, I sort of had this awakening of here we are selling products to help people enjoy the great outdoors, and yet we don't really understand the environmental consequences of the products we sell, and that is inconsistent. And so by God, in the time that I'm at REI, I want to have us stand for more than just connecting people with nature and the great outdoors. So I said, I want to be planet neutral by 2020. Oh yeah, okay, so how do you do that, Sally? Well, so it's very, very difficult. And we are on that journey, and in fact, one of my colleagues said, okay, Sally, you just said this in front of a big audience, and now we have to figure out how to do it, and I really need some help. I said, great, let's launch this journey. So back in 2005, we got 23 of our employees together, and they represented store managers. In fact, one particular store manager was an activist with forest ethics, something I'm going to mention again later around forest products usage. We had our employees most involved with things like buying our paper or building our buildings, buying our products, as well as just sort of employees at large who were opinionated and were going to push and pull us. 23 of them got together in a room. We locked ourselves in there for 3 days, basically, and said, what is our impact on the biosphere? And we did this with the help of Brian and Mary Natras, who are consultants in this field. And we came up with a huge chart peppering the walls of our auditorium with our impact on the biosphere, which was very, very daunting. So one of the things we learned in that process is you can't do this alone. You need to tap the wisdom of others. And so this fellow, may he rest in peace, just died this summer, Ray Anderson, was the CEO of Interface Incorporated, a maker of carpets. And that year, Ray came to the Outdoor Retailer Trade Show, this massive gathering of everybody selling all the cool stuff that we like to use in the outdoors. And he walked in with his southern drawl and his business suit to this fleece-clad cargo pant-wearing crowd that viewed themselves as environmentalists. And he blew us all away with the story of his own transformation and how he took this carpet company and turned it into a business that's really a model for social responsibility. He's written a couple books. The first one, Confessions of a Radical Industrialist, it's a great sort of roadmap on how this company went through this and the challenges he faced. And he talked about, in 1994, a customer of Interface said they'd like to see his environmental plan, and he didn't have one. Somebody gave him Paul Hawken's book that I showed earlier, The Ecology of Commerce. He read that, and it was sort of an epiphany moment for him. And he said in his book, I stood indicted as a plunderer, a destroyer of the earth, a thief of my grandchildren's future. And I thought, my God, someday what I do here will be illegal. Someday they'll send people like me to jail. So he began a process of rallying his troops. He was the CEO, so it was easier than it might have been from the bottom up. But people thought he was stark raving mad. And he talks in his book about that journey and how he got smarter and smarter and learned what the issues are, recognized that his carpets were ending up in a landfill, and they had a lot of PVC, and PVC, when it degrades, is very damaging to the environment. So in the 13 years between 1996 and 2009, I'm just going to give you a few statistics for Interface. They'd reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by 71% in absolute tons. They reduced their fossil fuel consumption per square yard of carpet by 60%. Part of that by just reclaiming and reusing old carpet and repurposing it. They'd reduced their scrap to landfill by 78%, reduced their water use by 75%, and their sales went up 60% and their profits doubled. That is a great story. That is a great example of a first mover who's enlightened, who is showing other businesses that this is in fact good for business, because that's the only way it's going to be sustainable. So this is a picture of one of REI's newer stores. This one happens to be in Norwalk, Connecticut. That's interface floor on the ground. Our employees love it. Why? Because somebody dumps their coffee. We love coffee, but it does get dumped in our stores. You just peel up one of those squares. There is no glue. It's a friction fit with the other pieces around it. You can jockey them around so it doesn't matter. It doesn't look like the piece next to it, but it all fits, and it's attractive. And it's affordable, by the way. It's as good a price as the other ones. So for decades, I think business leaders felt like this guy. He is wearing a harness, and he does have a carabiner on that line. I just want to point that out. Don't try this at home, at least not without the proper equipment. For decades, business leaders felt like they had to make trade-offs. Are they going to be, sustainable and socially responsible, or are they going to be profitable? Because you can't have it both ways. Fortunately, now, I'd say that companies that behave that way and deny their impacts or fail to even measure them and know what they're doing are putting themselves at significant risk. And there's also opportunities that are presented. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about REI's journey and talk about a few examples from my industry that help illustrate this. And I'm really looking forward to your questions when we get to that point. So in our journey, we said we want to move from random acts of kindness to strategic focus. We had all kinds of random acts of kindness. Employees recycling cans in the stores. Employees doing a good job of trying to buy responsible materials when they were building our stores. But it wasn't sort of put in a cohesive way. So that group of 23 people with that massive assessment of our impact on the biosphere narrowed it down to the low-hanging fruit. And they were climate change and energy, paper and forest products usage, waste reduction and recycling, green buildings, and last, but certainly not least and most complicated, is product stewardship, the impact of our products. So I'm going to show you a few more ads that have appeared in publications that help illustrate this sea change of where things are going now. So I mentioned one of our employees was active in an organization called Forest Ethics at the time we did this assessment. The only reason I knew that is because she was managing a store in San Diego. She now manages our Seattle flagship store. And she said, I'm a member of Forest Ethics, and I'm very concerned about what we're doing with our catalogs. And I just remember having that conversation. I thought, I don't even think about, or I'm not aware of the issues around paper and forest products. Well, about that time, Forest Ethics decided to come out with some ad campaigns. This is New York Times, Victoria's dirty secret. Not exactly the kind of way you want your brand depicted. Or how about this one, Victoria's secret, 1 million catalogs a day, ample forest destruction. And we're oh so supportive of global warming. Ooh, ouch. So that year, I think it was 2006, when they came out with this campaign, they accompanied that. They drove people to their website, and they accompanied it with a rating of companies of their paper and forest products usage if they sent out catalogs. And REI sent out a lot of catalogs. So I couldn't find the 2006 listing, but I'm just going to tell you that REI had like 1 fruitcake and 3 lumps of coal. So this is what the list looks like. We're actually on the nice list by 2007. But we were on the naughty list in 2006. It's not a place that REI wants to be. So here we are in 2007 with 1 fruitcake and the rest caribou. And it says, REI is doing pretty well, but as an outdoor clothing company, shouldn't they have better endangered forest protections? That just isn't nice. Okay, we don't like that too much, right? I mean, I'm just happy that we weren't on the front page or the poster child like Victoria's Secret was, but my goodness, that is huge risk to a business reputation. So by 2009, we're all caribou, and we're definitely in the nice section, and we intend to stay that way. But through that process, we went to Forest Ethics and we said, help us. Help us learn what you know. Help us understand where we need to change. How do we earn caribous? But we got smarter about all of that stuff. And it's just like, our heart wasn't in the wrong place. We just were naive. So through that process, we moved toward FSC certified paper in all of our catalogs. We actually worked with some paper suppliers to get a fluffier, lighter weight paper that costs less to mail. We went to smaller catalogs and realized they were more inspirational pieces driving people to the website. We reduced the number of catalogs and increased the emails. We're actually trying to get out of paper, and as soon as it stops working, we'll be out of it altogether. But thank you, it does actually work a little. It maybe makes you go in and use that coupon. Sorry, it just ran out on Sunday. I hope you got into the store, if you remember. How many members out there, by the way? REI members? All right, thank you. Okay, if you didn't raise your hand, you're missing out. This year we'll give over $100 million in dividends back to our members, so stay tuned for March when you get those dividend checks in the mail. Forest Stewardship Council and the companies that support it and produce paper products and forest products that are FSC certified would not exist if sustainability wasn't a team sport. If REI did this alone, there is no way that FSC would get off the ground. It only works because companies like Forest Ethics raise awareness, companies like REI and many, many more like it put a demand out there, and all of a sudden the forest practices change. And by the way, good forest practices are good for better recreation and wildlife habitat, and that's something that our customers certainly enjoy. So I wanted to shift a little bit to REI, and I think one of the reasons that we are rated by our employees so highly as a great place to work, and that's the lion's share of the Fortune ranking is based on how our employees view us, is because we do a lot in the community and because we give back. And so this is a very typical picture of a service project. Our employees on average did 6 hours apiece of back-breaking hard labor times 10,000 employees, over 60,000 hours. But through our stores and our members, some of you raised your hand, I hope some of you have done service project with us, and projects we sponsored, we did 2 million hours of volunteer service on public lands. And this is, back-breaking trail work and things like that. It is really a feel-good activity, and I'm very proud of it, and so are our employees. But that runs in contrast to what happens when you're working in shipping and receiving, and you're peeling all these plastic bags off of these pieces of clothing, because nobody wants to buy dirty or smudged clothing, and you're putting it in this dumpster and you're putting it into the landfill. So you've done all this great work out in the field, and then you come back and you feel personally guilty because you are the one tearing the packages open. You're shoving it there and you're putting it in the landfill, and that is just something that really bothered us and really bothered our employees. So we began to work around the country to get national recycling contracts so that we could recycle base materials from every store, which we're doing with, I think, the exception of some stores in Arizona, because Arizona is not as enlightened as Colorado. It is very hard to actually get commercial recycling there. So there we've got to continue to do some of the random acts of kindness and get it to recycling centers ourselves. But everywhere else, we have a recycling contract. Poly bags, which is what garments come in, is a harder issue because you do need to protect these garments. So we worked upstream in the supply chain, beginning with our own brand of REI gear and apparel, to have them bundled. So instead of a poly bag with 1 item in it, it might be a poly bag with 10 items in it. And that's 10 items that are the right number of items to go to any given store. Then we started working with our vendors, and the next vendor to adopt this was Prana, the yoga company. So what happens when you do that? We're saving money on plastic bags. We're saving money on our waste stream. We're saving money on unwrapping the plastic bags. And it's a win-win all over. And we're sharing that because it's a team sport. Here's another example. So Novara is REI's brand of bicycle. And I was just delighted someday when somebody said, "Oh, I got a new bike, Sally. It's really great." And I said, "Oh, what'd you get?" And he said, "I got this great Spanish brand of bike called Novara." I said, "Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a great bike." Anyway, Novara is our brand of bike. And they used to come in these boxes that you see on the left side of the screen. And on the right side is what they looked like when you unpacked the box and you were a bike mechanic putting this together. You don't want a scratched up bike. It's got to be protected. But can you imagine the amount of time taken to just get that tape and stuff off the bike on the right-hand side? And by the way, once you've pre-built it, with the exception of a few things, it won't fit back in that box again. So if it's built centrally and shipped to a store to just get the wheels put on and the last little bits, it won't fit in that box. So we have an engineer, Eric, and he says, "I engineer garbage." So this is one of Eric's biggest early triumphs. He redesigned a box that 4 unbuilt bikes fit in. And when they're built, 3 bikes will fit in them, and they can be shipped to the store in these boxes. They stack better, and besides all the packaging you don't have to undo, we are no longer shipping as much air around as we were before, so we're saving on shipping costs. So we're saving, let's see, I think, here's the statistics. We will build almost 1,300 additional bikes over a 5-year period at no additional cost because it's easier to undo this packaging. We reduced our paper waste 68%. We eliminated 3,800 pounds of metal staples, 1,900 pounds of non-recyclable plastic, and we're trying to get other bike manufacturers to do this as well. So it's these kinds of innovations that actually they're reducing our shipping costs, they're reducing our landfill costs, they're reducing our labor costs, and they're better for the environment. That's the kind of thing that you want business to do. So that's the easy stuff. The hard stuff is around products. So how do you get products from this take, make, waste loop into something that's more of a closed circle? And it's extraordinarily difficult, and it absolutely is a team sport to be able to do it well. I picked Nalgene bottles just because we did a recall on all Nalgene bottles a few years ago because of a scare over a chemical called bisphenol A, or BPA. I will tell you that the science is somewhat inconclusive, but the popular opinion moved before the science got on board, and we said, you know, if there's anything to this, we don't want to be perpetuating this, so we pulled all the new bottles off our shelves. We took any Nalgene bottles back with BPA and then that people wanted to return. So we had 7 rail cars full of Nalgene bottles that we took back. So we worked with Aladdin in this case and repurposed them into these insulated cups where the plastic that comes in contact with the liquid does not have any BPA. So at least it didn't go into a landfill immediately. It was repurposed, which was helpful. But an interesting side story is we sold an awful lot of aluminum bottles. And so this is a brand called SIG. It's a Swiss brand. We have been a SIG customer, or we've been a customer of SIG's, if you will, for 70 years. This is a 100-year-old Swiss company. And they reassured us that this would be a great replacement for those bottles containing BPA. So we sold a boatload of them, over $1 million, I think, of SIG bottles. Then somebody out there in the scientific community deconstructed a SIG bottle and realized they had a liner in the can that had BPA in it. So through an omission and a lack of transparency, SIG capitalized on a situation and ended up actually having their CEO fired, losing the 70-year relationship with REI. We won't do business with a company that behaves in that way, and lost the credibility of really the world that was a follower of SIG products because of this omission. So BPA is in a lot of things. It's in Coke cans. It's in most canned goods you found in the store. I mean, it's everywhere. So it was easy to do. To have it here, they just needed to be transparent about it. And it's interesting with Nalgene, they approached us at the Outdoor Retailer Trade Show with an army of PhDs to work with our buyers to convince us that BPA wasn't a problem. And we said, you've missed the boat. This isn't about BPA. This is about what consumers want. And the consumers have spoken, and they do not want this product. And you could do something smart like Camelback did and produce a bottle that has no BPA. So Camelback basically took over from Nalgene as our #1 bottle manufacturer, and SIG is no longer in business with us and may be struggling to be in business at all. So that's just a cautionary tale of what can happen and the way consumer sentiment is really moving companies along. So as we've tried to become more socially responsible around products, we've realized that it is the ultimate in team sports. And so one of our employees, Kevin Mayette, who heads product quality for us, got together with his counterpart at Patagonia and Timberland. And the 3 of them said, we have got to create a movement that helps identify the impact of the products that we sell. So together, they formed this little nascent coalition. They called it the Eco Working Group. They recruited up to 100 businesses, over 100 businesses, mostly in the outdoor industries, but also included brands like Levi's, to begin to get our head around the science of our products and their impact on the environment. Fortunately, we were able to convince the Outdoor Industry Association. We're a big member, so it wasn't that hard to convince them. But they're based here in Boulder, and they are a trade association for our industry, and they picked this up and because it really needed to be industry-wide. So this is like, okay, so if you've got a product and you're going all the way up to when the materials are extracted from the earth, and then they're manufactured, and they're shipped, and they're milled, and all of these things, and they end up in an REI store, and then they end up in a landfill, what is that impact from basically cradle to grave, or hopefully cradle to cradle? So this is now in beta test. It's been, the effort's about 3 years old. This is an eco-index beta site, and a whole bunch of businesses, ourselves included, are piloting this on several products. So these are the 4 products that REI is doing right now as we speak, all the way up the supply chain. It's a polypropylene long underwear top. It's our Half Dome 2 tent, which is our most popular selling tent. It's the Afterburner bike, a bike product, and then it's merino wool socks. And we picked these because they are so different. A natural fiber and merino wool, a synthetic fiber and polypro, tent and a bike product that has all kinds of things. And we're measuring carbon, waste, and water. And we're coming together with all these other businesses to put it in this eco-index and measure our success. So that's great, but the outdoor industry is tiny relative to products produced in the world, right? So 2 companies got together, Patagonia and Walmart, and said, and Walmart, by the way, has been doing a lot around sustainability. I know they're a company people love to vilify, but I got to tell you, they are doing a tremendous amount in this arena, and maybe it's because they have had an impact to their reputation that they're trying to overcome. But those 2 folks talking together, Patagonia on behalf of the Eco Working Group and Walmart on behalf of the American Apparel and Footwear Association, got together and collectively have formed something called the Apparel Coalition. So that's the Outdoor Industry Association, it's the American Apparel and Footwear Association, and it's the European Outdoor Association. And if you take all of the products that this group produces, it's something like 50% of all garments produced in the world. That is big. So when we think about taking this complicated world of a product and its impact on the environment, and if we can get it reduced down to a rating or an index that you as a consumer can go to a store and understand and change your behavior, just like, well, hopefully not just like, simpler than reading a nutrition label, we've come a long way. So I want to kind of wrap up here with a little bit about what REI is doing on our transparency and reporting. Every year since 2007, we've produced a stewardship report. It's on the website rei.com/stewardship. And if you're interested, I'd encourage you to go out there because it's got the good, the bad, and the ugly on our journey to becoming sustainable. And we're trying hard to make progress. Will we get to my BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal of planet neutral by 2020? I don't know how. Maybe a few miracles needed along the way, but we're certainly trying to understand that. And you've got to know what you're doing in order to change it. So I'm going to start with a chart on our greenhouse gas emissions. Back in 2006, when we started this effort, we realized we didn't actually have a baseline. So we hired an army of MBA students. The MBA students out there will be happy about this because they like internships. We hired an army of them. It wasn't terribly fun work. It was actually going through all of our utility bills for every single facility and then looking at the carbon footprint of that utility in that market and determining our dirtiest markets, where our greenhouse gases were being emitted, and thereby giving us an idea of where do we go, where's the low-hanging fruit within that to reduce our carbon footprint. So 31%, this was a shocker, 31% of our carbon footprint was if we took responsibility for the travel made by REI Adventure Travelers. I never would have put that on the list. It's a small part of our business, the biggest part of our carbon footprint, and we haven't figured that one out yet other than buying renewable energy credits from the Bonneville Environmental Foundation, which is what we do to offset that. But next is electricity, and largely that's in lighting and not in heat and cooling. Employee commuting, product transportation, shipping stuff to you if you order something and have it fulfilled at your house, corporate travel, and so on. So if you know what it is, you can measure it. So this is a chart of our carbon footprint in tons of CO2 equivalent from 2006 to 2010. And the darker bars are net of the offsets that we're purchasing for REI Adventures. So you see a relatively flat line during a time frame when REI's top line has grown close to 30%. So that's really hard to do, and I'm enormously proud of this because we have actually been able to flatline our growth in carbon emissions. And so, can I get that to zero? I don't know, short of just going out and buying a bunch of renewable energy credits, which isn't really what we're trying to get done. Recycling and waste stream is the next thing. 84% of our waste is now recycled, 88% by weight. But you see the bar, the highest bar is retail stores, and the top of that bar is largely the plastic packaging associated with garments. So I talked about some of the things we're doing to try and reduce that. Paper, 50% of our paper is in catalogs. If we can go all electronic over time, that will come down. But we know what it is, boxes, shopping bags, things like that. It's not toilet paper. We're not going to be getting rid of that anytime soon. But we have had significant reductions. Our sales have increased, as I said, about 30% over this period of time. The use of our paper products has decreased about 14%, or 417 tons. The other thing I would say is important is when we first went on this journey, we did not know where our forest products were coming from. We had almost zero chain of custody knowledge. We now have 89% chain of custody knowledge. So only 11% of the paper or forest products we use does not have really clear origins, and that is relatively low risk coming out of mostly North America, where we know there's a pretty good shot at that it's been responsibly produced. So buildings, Boulder was our first prototype for a new generation of REI store. The second one was in Round Rock, Texas, because we wanted to have very different markets. So here are some pictures of Boulder and Round Rock, where we're bringing natural light into the store. So the dressing rooms, you're actually trying on clothes during daylight in dressing rooms that show you the clothing in natural light. Sometimes those fluorescent lights, especially in hotel rooms, I think I can't be that old, can I? Anyway, in dressing rooms, the color does change, so it's nice to see in natural light. But building integrated photovoltaics, lots of other green features to these buildings, very, very expensive to do, but we did it to prototype, to try. Fixtures made of rapidly renewable materials, recycled steel, wear like iron, wear even if they get beaten up, they still look good, and that's where we're going with a lot of our stores. We also reduced our costs and our carbon footprint by going with Green E certified renewable energy, and we picked it in our dirtiest markets. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but Denver is one of our dirtiest markets because of the sources of your electricity, coming largely from low-grade coal. And so the Front Range of Colorado, largely REI stores driven by wind power. Also in Maryland and in parts of Texas is where we locked in the Green E certified contracts. We did it, by the way, before oil ran up in price the last go around, and we made money on the contracts, which is pretty amazing. Can't say that's always going to happen. Kara's standing here on top of the roof of the San Diego store. It was one of our first 11 installations for solar power. And I was saying to some of your colleagues earlier this evening, this was tough. With incentives from states and the federal government, the 10-year IRR on these 11 stores was 1.5%. It's not a reason to run out and put solar on your stores. We are this year putting it on, doubling that number. We're going to go to 23 stores by the end of the year, and we're now at a double-digit IRR over a 10-year period of time with less support from either federal or state incentives. So what's happening is you support an organization like an REI that's an early adopter, the price comes down, the technology improves, and pretty soon this is going to make sense for everybody. So we'll be at 23 stores by the end of the year, and it's significantly changing our carbon footprint. So it's a good example that we can't do this alone, and it's a team sport with our elected officials as well, city, state, and federal. There is your former Attorney General back there smiling and clapping hands behind the president. This was actually the America's Great Outdoors Act where I got the picture, but government does play a role. Government plays a role in helping incent businesses to do things that do make sense for the planet. And I don't know where everybody is in terms of how you feel about climate change and cap and trade and carbon taxes, but I can tell you this, that none of us are paying for the consequences of our use of carbon. And I think until some mechanism is put in place that recognizes the consequences of that, it's going to be very hard for us to become climate neutral, but I think we have an opportunity to do that if we just get smart about how some of those policies are applied and do it really on a worldwide basis. And we all know, of course, that the best electron is the one we don't use to begin with, and that starts with conservation, and that is good for business. So I'd say one bright light in this journey that we're all on together is that the young people in this room, my own children who are young adults, the kids coming up behind them, really, really care a lot about this. The average age of REI's employees in our stores is 32, in our headquarters it's 34. We're a young culture. We have employees that do hold us accountable, care deeply about this, and are helping guide us along this way. And I know we don't want this to come true. Wow, what is this place? It smells like Home Depot. So I want to leave you with a poem from Ray Anderson's book. It was written by an Interface Inc. employee named Glenn Thomas after the gathering that Ray did with his leaders to try and help them understand why the journey on sustainability was an important one. It's called Tomorrow's Child. Without a name, an unseen face, and knowing not your time or place, tomorrow's child, though yet unborn, I met you first last Tuesday morn. A wise friend introduced us to, and through his shining point of view, I saw a day that you would see, a day for you, but not for me. Knowing you has changed my thinking, for I had never had an inkling that perhaps the things I do might someday somehow threaten you. Tomorrow's child, my daughter's son, I'm afraid I've just begun to think of you and of your good, though always having known I should. Begin I will to weigh the cost of what I squander, what is lost, if ever I forget that you will someday come to live here too. Thank you. So I'm delighted to take your questions. They're roving mics, and it looks like there's one right up here in the front. We could start there.
Oh, where did you go?
Right there.
Okay, good.
Yes.
That's where I was going.
Hi, Sally. I've been an REI member since 1975, and I wonder what are the road bumps over the time that I've been an REI member. A lot of products have gotten offshored. What are the road blocks to bringing that production back to the USA?
Thanks for the question. I'm assuming everybody heard it. We really can't set back the clock on globalization, in my view. When I took on the job of CEO, sat down with my board of directors and leadership team and said, you know what, partly because when you go to work for 10 people, you're trying to figure out how do I work for these 10 people and how do I capture their wisdom without asking them to tell me what to do when they're not as familiar with my business as I am. So what we did is we talked about the future, and the rules of engagement were no discussions can take place other than 25 years in the future, and what are those big trends going on that the co-op needs to think about 25 years in the future. So I tell you this because globalization was one of them. The 5 of them, just quickly to rattle them off. Globalization, the world is getting flat, interconnected, specialized. Second was urbanization. People are moving to cities. What are the implications then for active outdoor recreation? How do we bring the outdoors into people's everyday lives? The third was demographic shifts in the population. Can't quite see the room, but my guess is that the room here does not necessarily represent the population of Denver, and the people that are recreating and enjoying our public lands don't always represent the public at large. So how do we address that? Technology was the fourth one, and climate change. So going to globalization, which is really what your question is about, it's just like I was actually talking to Dean Reardon. She started her career as a mechanical engineer, as did I, And she began really with a specialty in textiles from Georgia, because Georgia was the region of this country that specialized in textiles manufacture. That then began to move to lesser expensive places, and it probably was in Georgia to begin with because of low-cost labor prices in Georgia. You had a few mills, Malden Mills, for example, in New England that was still around producing fleece, but for the most part, the fabric that we used had moved offshore. So if you are importing fabric and sewing it here, you're actually paying more for shipping than you might otherwise. And when I came to REI, we did have we had a manufacturing plant, and most of what we were producing was domestically sewn fleece product because it was bulky, and we were using Malden product, which was made in New England. Malden still does some here, but does a lot offshore now. Our factory was condemned by the city of Seattle to build the Mariners Stadium. So we relocated it, and it was condemned again because of the widening of a rail corridor. So after twice trying to relocate our factory, we realized that the quality of the products that we were producing ourselves was not as high as the quality of the products that were being produced elsewhere. So that is just a little illustration of the fact that we are now specializing in different areas, and what we're known for in this country in terms of our specialty around manufacturing does not lend itself to the kind of labor that's required to manufacture a lot of the goods that our customers like to buy. In our own factory, there was not one sewer that was born in the United States. Every sewer was from Asia or Eastern Europe, because that's where the talent pool was for that skill set. So I think that it's a very complicated issue, and I think there are opportunities, especially for things that are highly automated, things that are heavier, things where the materials are here, where it makes economic sense to manufacture here. But I can also say that I'm proud of the kind of working conditions that we insist on the factories that we work with, along with others in the industry, and the kind of work we've done to help, as a big customer of a lot of businesses, help raise the game for others. And that actually has created good working conditions and jobs for people who, we have relative poverty here, there's no question about it. But extreme global poverty is somewhat alleviated by the fact that manufacturing is shared around the world. So there's a lot of complexity, and I would say that if it made sense for our members economically to produce product or to buy product here, we would, and we do. But many of the products that you want to buy and that we sell, there is no manufacturing capacity in the United States anymore for it. So it's really a tricky issue. Let's see. Okay.
Thank you. With all due respect, REI is a fly speck compared to the general, the GNP or the GDP, whatever it's called nowadays. And the population of the United States is a fly speck compared to the population of the rest of the world and those countries that are growing. One country, for example, China, doesn't really play fair. If we have to play under certain rules, like the gentleman that was up there, or whatever you want to call him, with those other people that were signing a bill, and that impairs our ability to compete, and the other people don't play fair, our 9.1 unemployment rate may stay the same or get higher. How do we talk the other people in the world into doing what you'd like them to do?
Yeah, boy, I wish I had a simple answer for that one. I think from a REI perspective, we're trying to run a sound business that's a co-op that's hiring people, and we've hired a lot of people. And I think that's the best method of job creation is to have a business that is economically sustainable as well as sustainable in other dimensions. And that is the beauty of the United States, is you can be in a place like this, you can do the right thing for customers and for the planet, and you can be rewarded for that by customers like you that shop with us and by the number of people we can employ as a result. And I don't look to government to really intervene on that. I know the playing field isn't necessarily level. I think there's some parts of the world that would consider that we do things that don't make it level. If you're a sugar producer, for example, or a cotton producer, you may find that some of our agricultural subsidies are very, very unfair. So it's not easy to suggest that everything we do is fair and open and everything everybody else does isn't. I know that's not what you said, but the reality is it's quite complex. I mean, you probably didn't know that the duties were lower for products coming to us from France than they are coming to us from Bangladesh. So there's a lot of weird inequities and things like that, and they're going to bounce around. And I can't speak to what our policy should be around the evaluation of the Chinese currency, for example. I do know that Americans have enjoyed the benefit of that in cheaper products, and I think some of those things may be coming to an end. So I think that there are no easy answers. I don't think that there are correct answers, frankly, on the extreme sides of the political rhetoric on both sides. I think that what most of us as business leaders want is a consistent business environment where we can do the right thing for our customers and operate our businesses in an ethical, sound way. And one of the things I wanted to convey in this is that government's not going to be the watchdog on whether we're doing the right thing or not. The public opinion is. And I think as there is more transparency about some of these inequities that might exist in policies around the world, the court of public opinion will come to weigh in on it, because we can all vote with our dollars, and they're very, very powerful. So I don't have a better answer than that. It's a really complex question, and I do think government plays a role, but I don't think it's simple. And I'm hoping this super committee that's dealing with our deficit and so on can come up with some of these things that really are a little cattywampus on our side of the table when it comes to equity around the world in some of the duties and tariffs that we have as well. I'm waiting for the mic runner to tell me where to go next. Right. Okay.
Hello, I have a question. REI is producing, basically manufacturing products in different parts of the world. And you started talking your presentation from kind of looking at the environmental considerations, and as we know, different parts of the world do their business and have various impacts on the environment. What kind of consideration do you give to where your products are manufactured in relation to those regions of the world that have a certain impact on the environment? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. One of the things that we're trying to understand is the impact of the products. Once you have good information, you can begin to make smart decisions about that. I was asked by an elected official to weigh in on, by writing a letter of support or testifying, I think it was, on conflict minerals. Conflict minerals that's probably not a topic that's a big issue for the co-op, but maybe for Apple Computer, I think, or any electronics manufacturing. That's probably not the best topic for us. But let's say that if you take that example of the tent that I used, or the bicycle, and there are metal components in that, we will, through that process, understand where is that metal produced? What are the processes by which it's produced? What's the environmental impact of those processes? And that will change that index. So what you're going to demand from us over time, we hope, is that our products have a low environmental impact, and at end of life, eventually, and we hope you'll give them to other people to use in the outdoors until they wear out. But when they wear out, we hope we can reclaim some of that, and that will be one of those factors. So I think it will solve itself if we get the science of understanding, science and the business of understanding what's happening through that entire supply chain to better understand the product. That will, nobody wants to be, buying blood diamonds or conflict minerals or, manufacturing in a plant that's using child labor or exploiting workers. But you have to know what's going on in order to make those decisions, and that's where we're going with this eco-index, and I think it will help us get at exactly that issue. There's several over here. There's some in the top balcony. Who's got a mic? And there you go.
Hi. My question, I'll bring it down a level perhaps. It's about, obviously you're continuing to build your brand around sustainability, And as you go out and gain more customers, what are your secrets, if you can share any, as far as getting those customers not just as a one-shop opportunity, but retaining them as being loyal customers? And also, what role does promotions play in that process? Because I'm finding that a lot of retailers are being a lot more promotion heavy in their message. And how do you kind of marry the two and balance them?
Yeah, so there's a lot in that question, and I'll try and kind of try and dissect it. And this isn't about secrets at all. I'm very transparent, so is the co-op. You from a competitor? No, just kidding. So the first part of the question, how do you, if you get people in the door, how do you keep them? How do you, I'll use our terminology, how do you get them from maybe an outdoor participant to an outdoor enthusiast? Or, it's tricky because people are extraordinarily busy. There's a lot to compete from their time. Children in particular, I just so worry about, spending, literally, I think that the latest numbers from the Kaiser Family Foundation are 56 hours a week in front of a screen and only 30 minutes a week in active outdoor play. So what does that look like for our business? Are we going to be a co-op selling outdoor-themed video games? It's certainly not where we want to be. So we're trying to figure out, what is that continuum that moves somebody from just trying something to actually becoming an enthusiast? And we realize that one of the points of difference that we have is, the people that know what they're talking about. The outdoors it's sort of fundamental to all of us as human beings. It's some connection to nature I think we need to be healthy. When you have life insurance and banks and everybody else using the beautiful outdoors to sell their products, there's some kind of resonance. So our goal and our purpose as an organization is to inspire, educate, and outfit for a lifetime of outdoor adventure and stewardship. So outfit is the part you all think of us as, but we think of ourselves as inspiring people to do things they aspire to do. Educating, which is, how do I get from, I'd like to do this, but I don't know how, to, I've taken that first step to trying it, to now I feel like an expert and I'm going to take out my friends. So that's the educate piece. And then a lifetime of outdoor adventure and stewardship means not just doing it once, but it means having it work its way into my life and hopefully be a responsible steward of the beautiful places that we have. So that's what we're all about. Part of the clinics and classes, like the one Dean Reardon mentioned, how to fix a flat tire on a bike, is some of those things that try and just demystify the outdoors and don't make it seem so extreme. The REI that the gentleman that first spoke was like, many years ago, was a pretty intimidating place if you weren't a pretty hardcore outdoor enthusiast. We've tried to make it very welcoming. I've had the most amazing stories from people who, they choose to send me a letter because they just got such amazing service because they felt so welcome. I'm going to use a woman named Carmen, who actually ended up working for us in Salt Lake City, the Sandy, Utah store. But anyway, she's Latina. English is her second language. She needed a pair of boots because she'd moved from a warmer climate to Salt Lake. She went into the Salt Lake store because somebody said, well, REI is a good place to get boots, and somebody else said, oh, no, don't go there, that's a men's store. But she went anyway, and she said, I met Dave, and said Dave sat down and he measured my foot, and then he tried on these boots, and she said, I felt like a princess. Because she'd never had, and this is probably a very normal experience for everybody in the room, but it is not a normal experience for many people who have not had a connection to great service before because of maybe the places they've shopped or the cultures that they've come from or the nature of their experiences. So we're trying on a really grassroots level for that employee and customer interaction to feel inclusive, to really understand what the customer wants, and to help understand, are they just trying something out and can they take it to the next level? And if they want to, can we get them in a clinic or a class to do that? And we're also bringing outdoor schools to many of our communities to actually provide more than just in-store clinics and classes. The other thing I would say is you get products that kind of cross over. So there was, JanSport produced this pack that was pink. a little backpack that was pink. And I remember going to the buyer saying, "A pink backpack? What are we thinking?" So the Rockstar Pink came out with this pink backpack, and there wasn't a girl in the country that didn't want it. And because we had a great relationship with JanSport, we had them. So we had all kinds of people coming into REI that had never shopped with us before. So that's one of those golden opportunities to say, all right, these are new people coming in. How's the experience? Did they enjoy it? Is there some way we can put things next to it, or clinics or classes or other things that might inspire them to do more than just buy this pink backpack? Same with pink Nalgene bottles when they came out. Same with North Face puppy down jackets that are pretty attractive in an urban environment. In fact, we've worked with the North Face saying, what can we do for those customers that come in to buy this for an urban use? And we're about to open in New York City, so we'll be experimenting some stuff there, to transform that buyer there into feeling that they belong in the outdoors. So it's complicated. It's less, I'd say, about advertising and more about the experience and what we do, and I think we could do a better job of it. And we're trying to research and continuing to work through that. I probably got way off topic with that question, but anyway, thanks. You can catch me later if I missed it.
We have time for one more, I think.
Sally, I have a feeling the answer to this question may be yes.
I don't answer any question, just yes. You figured that out, right?
Which is the more fruitful strategy at REI? Making profitable products and services environmentally friendly, or making environmentally friendly products and services profitable?
Both.
Yes.
You want me to elaborate? It has to be both. I think that we don't know, really, which is which. One of the things that's anathema to us is what I'll call greenwashing. It's, saying the green this and the green that, when people don't really understand the impact of the product. What we are all about is sort of taking a lid off, being really transparent in understanding a product. Because there are companies out there, well, I'll take Timberland. Because Timberland is a model company around sustainability. And I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago they came out with nutrition labels on their shoe boxes. And it was their effort to show what the environmental impact was of their product. And that was before we started working with them on the Eco Working Group, just before. So Patagonia, REI, and Timberland got together. And we started digging in and bringing scientists in, and Energy Star from the EPA and other groups, and Timberland realized that their labels were completely inaccurate. So they didn't know. They thought they were producing some things that were more environmentally responsible than they were, and they turned out thinking that they're things that had worse consequences than they actually had. So until you know, you can't really answer the question, but the answer is we've got to do both. And I think that what businesses that make green claims without understanding the underlying science are doing a real disservice to where we need to go as a country and as a society. And I think that as those things get a spotlight shined on them, it'll be less possible for them to do it, or it might backlash at them, just as you saw with some of those examples I used from the media. Well, thank you very much for your questions and your attention and coming tonight. It's been great.
So as Sally mentioned, the Daniels College of Business does believe that business should be the driving force behind public good and change. And I want to thank you on behalf of the University of Denver and the Daniels College of Business for running such a company and for sharing your story tonight and for being so honest and transparent about the issues that you face. I also told Sally before she came on stage that I'm very jealous of her. Not only does she have a great company to run and a cool job, but she is a person that can legitimately wear sweatpants and fleece to work every single day.
It's true.
Now, you can't beat that, can you? Let's give her another warm round of applause and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
So we will see you back here on November 7th for John McCarville, the CEO of Crocs. Please join us in the lobby for a reception. Thank you very much.